This is a lecture on American Mining Congress versus the Mine Safety and Health Administration. Sometimes we call this the AMC case. And the holding is that the agency's program policy letters stating which medical tests and qualified as diagnoses of lung disease for purposes of the regulations were interpretive rules under the APA. And just a heads up, this case is in most of the administrative law casebooks for upper level administrative law courses as a main case, or at least discussed extensively in the note cases. And it's one of our famous cases about this distinction about general statements of policy and interpretive rules, and goes hand in hand with the Pacific gas case that I made a talk about in another video. I also want to say that to my students watching this, some semesters, in the interest of time, we skip this case altogether because it's not binding precedent. Even though it's a famous case, kind of the classic case on this issue, I like the Hochter case better. I think it's much clearer and easier for students to understand. So even though I may have told the students to skip this or didn't assign it to someone in any given semester, I'd like to cover it because this is an important area that comes up a lot in practice and is a mess. And in terms of the case law, and this gives me a chance to explain that to my students. So this is our commission, the Mine Safety and Health Commission, and it's part of the Department of Labor. You may remember in an introductory lecture that I gave about administrative law and the regulatory state, I said it's hard to know. No one exactly knows how many federal agencies there are. And this is one of the problems, is that we have these agencies that litigate as a standalone party, even though on the org chart of the federal government, they're contained within the Department of Labor. They're responsible for occupational safety and health issues related to mines. And the most common type of mine that we're going to have is coal mines, but it could be other types of mines. The principal statute governing mine safety is the Federal Mine Safety and Health Act, and as relevant here, the statute requires that all mine operators provide the MSHA such information as the agency requires. In other words, the agency is authorized by their enabling statute to impose reporting requirements, all kinds of reporting requirements on the mines, on, let's say, coal mines, to file, how often they're going to file and what kind of data they have to give to the agency. It also gives the agency the general authority to issue regulations to carry out the substantive mandates of the Act, including that mine operators provide information on occupational health risks. So far, so good. Pursuant to this grant of statutory authority, the MSHA promulgated a notice and comment rule that said each mine operator is obligated to notify the MSHA within 10 days whenever a miner is diagnosed with certain occupational illnesses, including black lung disease. So let's stop right there. This is a leading health issue that has come up with coal mines. And depending on what part of the country you live in, I teach law school in Texas, and coal production's not one of the big industries in Texas. In the Midwest, let's say Southern Illinois, a lot of people are employed in the coal mines. And in the parts of the country with coal mines, the miners are inhaling coal dust all day, every day for years and years, and they develop a fatal medical condition called black lung disease. That's very nasty, and I hope none of you ever get it. And that's essentially coal dust in the lungs that sets off some biological process, and it becomes debilitating and can be fatal. So if a miner is diagnosed with black lung disease or is complaining of black lung disease, the coal mine is supposed to notify the MSHA immediately so they can keep track of which coal mines have safety precautions in place and which ones are having lots of black lung cases. But it wasn't clear what counts as a diagnosis. So the MSHA played by the rules with APA 553. They go through notice and comment rulemaking. They promulgate a rule They're authorized to do this by their enabling statute, saying all coal mines have to notify us immediately, within 10 days, if a miner is diagnosed with black lung disease. We want to know about every single case. And this used to, fortunately, black lung disease is less common than it was, let's say, 70 or 80 years ago. But they didn't really define diagnosis. So if a miner is showing some symptoms of black lung and gets an x-ray, and the x-ray shows black lung, has the miner at that point been diagnosed with black lung, or does a diagnosis require something more than an x-ray, like tissue samples and so forth? So imagine, right, that like, do you have to get a specific test, like a biopsy, to prove that you have black lung disease, or is it enough that you are symptomatic and an x-ray suggests this? So instead of going through notice and comment rulemaking again under 553 to resolve this, the MSHA issued something called a program policy letter, which just said that the x-ray counts as a diagnosis. Now, this should have been, you would think that this is good news, right? Like, we don't have to make the poor coal miner go get a tissue biopsy, have lung samples pulled out of his lungs and sent to a lab. If he gets an x-ray and it looks like he has black lung disease, that's good enough. Well, the coal mines didn't like this, and because they have an incentive to deny that they have any black lung cases. So they didn't like this. The American Mining Congress is the trade association for coal operators, for the managers and owners. They bring a lawsuit arguing that this is procedurally invalid because it really was a substantive rule. And I want to highlight something again for the law students watching this lecture. And that is challenging an agency policy that's been, the agency adopts a policy preemptively. So the agency hasn't even enforced it yet against the coal mines, but they're mad about the rule, and what they're saying is you had to go through notice and comment rulemaking. And I said this in a previous lecture, I'm going to say it again. If you win, the court sends it back, kicks it back to the agency, and the agency gets a do-over. So in theory, they could just adopt the exact same policy through notice and comment rulemaking, but they skip that step. So this is not a substantive challenge, it's a procedural challenge to have the rule declared invalid, and it's really functionally just buying time to slow down the agency. Now, the AMC argues that the PPL is a rule, this policy letter, and so it should have gone through notice and comment, and if it had, they would have had more opportunity to basically inundate the agency with a whole bunch of reasons and scientific studies showing that x-rays are a terrible way to diagnose black lung disease. And so what they would have gone and found their experts and their favorite studies showing that we get lots of false positives, that lots of people that get an x-ray and we think it's a black lung disease, and then when we follow up with a biopsy, it turns out that it's not. That's what they wanted to show so that the agency would back off from this rule. The agency responded, no, this is an interpretive rule. All we're doing is telling you how we interpret the word diagnosis in that earlier regulation for which we did do notice and comment rulemaking. So words have to be interpreted, right? And the key assertion is that this doesn't really add any new legal obligation. You have to, your obligation is the same. You just have to notify the agency when somebody's diagnosed with black lung disease and you're wondering what counts as a diagnosis, and we're telling you. And so, but as far as what you have to do, that hasn't changed. Maybe they could have, let's say, to play their side of this, they could argue that even if they had never issued this, they could have interpreted it that way without telling anybody. And so they could have been bringing enforcement actions against a coal mine saying, wait a second, you have coal miners who have x-rays and that counts as a diagnosis. And so they could have just done it that way and not issued the interpretive rule at all, and we wouldn't have had this case. And so they could have just interpreted it that way, and then when they were in litigation in an enforcement action against a coal mine, could have argued for their interpretation, and they probably would have won. And so all they're really doing is the friendly gesture of notifying the regulated industry about how they're going to proceed in their cases. And that doesn't create any independent factual legal basis for a legal action, or it doesn't impose additional sanctions on anyone. And all the relevant duties are already in the act that Congress passed, and the regulation that was already promulgated through notice and comment rulemaking. So to kind of wrap up here, the opinion essentially endorses the agency's position that factors like flexibility of the statement or the degree to which the agency treats it as binding on itself are not relevant to the interpretive rule exemption, even if they may be relevant to the general policy statement exception. Stop. For a law student, that should really bother you. It means that one of the takeaway from the AMC case is that courts might actually be taking a different approach if the agency says this is an interpretive rule than they do when the agency says it's a general statement of policy. And neither of these are defined by the APA. And as I said in the case about general statements of policy, the courts are all over the map. And now we have courts saying, and by the way, we're not even going to follow the same test when the agency says it's an interpretive rule. And it's really not clear what keeps an agency from just saying whichever one they feel like. So the agency might be able to do more with the interpretive rule category. And this is, I think, what we see happening is agencies are just calling stuff interpretive rules now so that they don't even have to worry about the force of law test. And then that in turn suggests that it's important to figure out when an agency's pronouncement can be characterized as an interpretation of some other valid statutory or regulatory provision. Okay, our lecture attendance password, if you need to document that you viewed this lecture, is inure, an important legal term that's used in finance law and in nonprofit charitable tax law.